Hi everyone, this is Handyman for the Everyman, and I'm just gonna do a quick video just to explain some of the numbers with regards to charging, whether you need to get the wall charger or whether you can get away with the mobile connector if you're getting a Tesla. Now, I was researching this and it took me a while to figure it out, so hopefully I can pass on the information to you so you can decide pretty quickly. And I would say that most of you probably don't need the wall connector, and you probably don't even need to upgrade your outlet to the 15 amp, and I'll explain why. So the way it works is that in Australia we have standard outlets going at 10 amps at 240 volts, and that equates to 2.4 kilowatt per hour. So what that means is that you can charge 2.4 kilowatts every hour. Now, the Tesla Model 3 rear wheel drive, which is the one that I have, has a battery size of 57.5 kilowatt hours. And so with that number there, the 57.5, if you divide that by the 2.4 kilowatts, you actually get 24. And that means that theoretically, and I mean in optimal conditions, you could actually charge that battery within 24 hours. Now, the thing is, the range here says 512 kilometers. You may not get 512 kilometers, and that will depend on a whole variety of factors, including whether you have it in Sentry mode, which can actually take some of the energy, as well as how much air conditioning you're using, whether you sit in the car idle, that sort of thing. So just take that 512 kilometer range with a pinch of salt, and who knows, you might get 400 or 450. But from what I can gather from a lot of the research that I've done, you're getting pretty close to 500 kilometers if you drive like a normal human being. And I can tell you now from my own experience the last few days that I'm getting 50 kilometers for 10%. But then when I've been doing things like turning on Sentry mode, etc., I might drive 20 kilometers and then I'm still spending like 8% of my battery. So I think it does really depend on how you're using it. But if you're actually just using it to drive to work and back, then I think you're going to get that sort of range, as long as you're not doing anything in between that's, like I said, sitting idle, and as long as you don't have Sentry mode on. So Sentry mode does take a little bit more energy, and I've done that at work. So I'll explain that a little bit later. So essentially, what that means is that you can charge at about, in theory, 21 kilometers per hour, but because of all the things that I've just explained, let's use, I think it's safe to use 13 kilometers an hour. And so if you look it up on the internet, a lot of the figures will say 13 kilometers per hour, and some of them will actually say 10 kilometers per hour. I think 10 is probably way too low. I think 13 is pretty reasonable for most of the driving that you're going to be doing. Like I said, if you do turn on Sentry mode, that will actually drain your battery quite a bit. I don't have real life data yet, but I can let you guys know if you're interested. I think there's probably some other videos about that. So as long as you're not using Sentry mode, I think 13 kilometers an hour is a perfectly good number to use if you're calculating for what your needs are going to be. So in a hypothetical week, let's say you're doing 50 kilometers a day, to and fro from work, and let's say you're not using Sentry mode, then I think at most you take 4 hours to charge per day. In fact, I've actually done this 50 kilometer sort of drive, and it took 3 hours to charge. So I think 4 hours would be generous, and I think even if you use Sentry mode, then 4 hours would be enough time. Essentially, that means that as long as you're finishing work, whatever time you finish work, if you're going to park overnight in your house, then as long as you've got an outlet in your garage or carport, then you can charge it within 4 hours. And then on the weekends, if you're doing double that, 100 kilometers, then it would take you about 8 hours to charge per day. And that's really a conservative figure. You might need even less than that. So as long as you're going to be parked at home for 8 hours, you're going to be able to do that 100 kilometers. Now, the problem would be if you actually needed to drive, say, 150 kilometers on the weekends, then you might be cutting a little bit close because you may not be able to charge all of your driving for that day. But then even then, let's say you're doing the 50 kilometers during the weekdays, you'd be able to catch up because obviously you can charge, let's say if you're parked at home for at least 12 hours, which I'm guessing most of you would be, let's say conservatively you're parking at home 10 hours a day, then you're going to be able to catch up during the weekdays to make up for those the big weekends of driving that you're doing. So I mean, I don't know too many people that will be driving a lot more than this. I mean, I feel like I do quite a bit of driving, and so far it's been perfectly fine. And in fact, I get up to 100% basically every day. So I think for most people that I can think of, doing sort of general normal work where you're just driving to work and back, the Tesla Model 3 at least, with the current battery and with a standard outlet, you're probably going to be fine. So I think you'd save a lot of money not getting the wall charger, which is $800. So it's $300 more than the mobile connector. Plus you actually have to upgrade. You have to get an electrician to come and install it. So that can cost, like, I'm not sure exactly, but maybe like another $1,000. So I think the mobile connector is perfectly fine for most people. And in fact, the Tesla salesman told me that gave me the reassurance to just go with the mobile connector. And prior to that, even having read everything up, I was really nervous, but I can tell you now, for you guys out there, you can probably get the mobile connector for most of you. The other thing just to quickly mention is that with the new Tesla 3, the Highlander version anyway, it's got a different type of battery, and so you actually are best to charge it to 100% every day, which is great because that just means that you've got more range in the car. Whereas with the older batteries, you'd have to charge to 80% ideally. And so they always told you not to go to 80%. But actually, you're supposed to go to 100% now. All right, well, that's it for this video. Hope that was helpful for someone who is debating whether to buy the wall charger or not. And I think, like I said, just crunch the numbers. You're probably going to be fine. One last quick thing to say is that you could upgrade to the 15 amp outlet, and then you'd have to pay an electrician a few $100s to do that. But that would, with the mobile connector, you can actually change the plug, and you can actually plug it into a 15 amp outlet, and then you can just crunch the numbers again. Basically, you'd get 50% more for everything. My electrician actually mentioned that the standard was only going to be giving me 8 amps, and I think I read that also, that you'd only get 8 amps out of the standard outlet, but you can actually get 10 amps. So I've got some experience now, and if you look at this slide here, that's from the app, and it actually has been going at 10 amps. So it's not a theoretical 10 amps, it's an actual 10 amps. So you will actually get 2.4 kilowatts per hour out of your outlet. All right, everyone. Hopefully that was helpful. See ya.